Truly, a lot has been said about NVIDIA's bold new addition to the enrichment of our favorite pastime. Capital G gaming, that is.
What a fucking
amazing new piece of technology that will revolutionize my favorite hobby. Hooray!
Now with the lovely, much requested addition of DLSS 5. Once DLSS was a simple method of resolution upscaling, but now, me oh my, it's evolved into a method of neural rendering that takes a fully finished game frame, such as this one, and remakes it, kind of like this, applying AI-generated lighting, AI-generated materials, and AI-generated plastic surgery. Most people whose eyes have been defiled by this idiotic and undoubtedly a massive upcoming price hike to our already precious RAM sticks have very reasonably panned this as absolute levels of AI slobbery. Teenagers are aged into full-grown adults. Nerdy, disgusting Redditor characters are yassified into Instagram thoughts. And beloved footballers for shit teams nobody gives a fuck about, like Virgil van Dijk, is suddenly turned into Jakub. Rami Ismail, game dev of Nuclear Throne, was considerably less measured, describing DLSS 5 as the most dystopian slop in existence. Well, he has clearly never stumbled across a more Pegasus or Pyro Live video on his YouTube feed, I guess. Of course, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, disagrees, but he also believes that the hypothetical AGI has already been achieved, so what does he know? DLSS 5 overrides artistic intent by its misguided attempts at a realism filter. It looks like ass. It uses two RTX 5090s, which is gonna run you just around $8,000 US, and a kidney. It looks like ass, and well, these criticisms are well aired and well recognized. But I read a particular quote that captured a more sinister, less talked about angle that I wanted to yap about. Dave Oshry of New Blood Interactive, the publisher behind Dusk, aka the single best FPS game ever released since Unreal Tournament 99, said this: "At this rate, why make game art at all? Why not just draw some shapes and colors and let AI generate what it thinks it should look like?" The quote is in relation to pushing back against this development. I'm pretty black-pilled when it comes to boycotts, but I suppose billions must try. This part of the quote is what interests me. Why make game art at all? Game development at its core is a negotiation with limited resources, time, money, and talent, which gets allocated based on what actually reaches the player. Concept art is sort of ephemeral, but it's incredibly important because it informs the final environment, the final character design, the entire mood and vibe of a video game once it reaches the player as a finished product. Animation fidelity likewise is important for a game's flow and feel, and because jiggle physics exists. That entire chain of creative decisions is, however, predicated on one assumption: what the artist and developer ships is what the player ends up experiencing. Well, that's where DLSS 5 snaps that assumption in half like a twig. The moment it becomes an industry standard toggle, quietly enabled by default in a major release, maybe silently applied in a storefront setting, the negotiation changes. A studio executive, known for always making the best, most sound decisions, looking at a balance sheet and a shipping deadline, will eventually ask the question: if the AI is going to remake the scene anyway as a filter, why waste another month working on the environmental set? Why have all these people working on character models? You can go ahead and call this a alarmist hypothetical. It won't stay a alarmist hypothetical for long. Optional features like dynamic resolution was optional until it became an expectation. Look at ray tracing, TAA, temporal upsampling, that app that makes a legally aged anime girl pop up on your screen while playing Hearts of Iron, volumetric fog and clouds, all these layers of optionality that are industry standards nowadays. These are already bad enough for game optimizing, but imagine when they start messing with the intent, the artistry of the game scene. The creative logic of why bother might not be pertinent, but the financial logic will spread quickly and quietly. I'm not thinking that people with actual passion for game development and art are going to stop caring. I just think they won't be around to make any decisions when DLSS 5 starts taking off. From one budgetary decision in crunch time, to company policy, to industry standard. The developer of Dusk, the best shooter since yada yada yada, David Yassmaxxing, said this directly on the question of optionality. You mean optional like upscaling? You mean optional like temporal AA? Optional like real-time GI? Optional like any number of optional features that anyone who has played a AAA game in the past half decade can tell you aren't really optional, because games are now built to lean on these technologies. It is inevitable for AAA games. The question of artistic intent being ruined isn't even going to matter for major publishers and developers, because there won't have to be any artistic intent. Just approximate a face from a pre-made asset and have the AI filter slop out a totally distinct and imaginative OF model. Why waste time on lighting and set design? Just have the AI post-process the scene itself. Will the toggle button, the option, matter when future games are developed with the expectation that the end user is going to use DLSS or have a way worse experience? Why wouldn't shareholders and executives be licking their fat picky chops at the prospects of greatly reducing creative staffing and development time? Remember, DLSS 5 is a post-processing filter. You can be as lazy as you want with the geometry of the game and the models and the environment, and if you are detached enough from the reality of enjoying video games and attached enough to the prospect of stacking fat stacks of cash to the ceiling by publishing video games, it is a slam dunk to trust the filter to make up for anything missing, to turn this into an industry standard so that the player has to use it or suffer a way worse experience. Basically impossible to imagine AAA games as an even worse experience than nowadays, but hey, I'm sure the industry will find a way to dig their grave deep enough to hit the stash where they buried all those ET game copies. Anyway, yapping about AI and AAA games is like screaming at the rising high tide. Just get out of the water, I guess, and go play some peak older games and indie games like Dusk, Dark Souls 2, Custer's Revenge, etc. You think DLSS 5 could work some magic on Redfall? Maybe fix up Concord? I don't even think the most AI tech bro married to his locally running GBT with a tastefully Wi-Fi connected vacuum cleaner between his legs would believe in a miracle like that. Anyway, see you next Friday, I guess.